Sadness. Difficulty concentrating. Loss of interest. Depression can be treated. The first step is talking.
Welcome to Healthy Cleveland. I'm your host, Leah Haslage, and today we'll be discussing severe weather preparedness. Our guest is Shaddy Swade, who is the project director for the Cleveland Department of Public Health's Office of Emergency Preparedness. And we have Jordan Bryan with the Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center, who's our American Sign Language interpreter. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So when we talk about severe weather preparedness, the first thing, of course, we think of is storms.
Yeah.
So what are the different kinds of storms? Break that down for us.
Sure. So a lot of people sometimes are confused between thunderstorms, tornadoes, what that all means. Thunderstorms generally have the threat of rain, high winds, things to that of that nature. When we talk about tornadoes, we're taking it up a level. We're talking about funnel clouds, debris, damage to facilities. There's also a term that not a lot of people know. People know lake effect snow, but there's also something called lake effect rain.
Oh.
So the lake effect snow happens when the difference in the air temperature versus the water temperature over the lake is so severe that it causes snow kind of towards the eastern part of our community. And lake effect rain is kind of the same thing. It happens more towards the late summer and into the fall, but a lot of times you can see more rain in some of the same areas that are affected by lake effect snow than you would in other parts of our community. There's also flooding and flash flooding. Flooding when water fills up an area where there normally isn't water, and flash flooding is when a flood occurs in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people kind of get confused on, like what's
Sure.
flash flooding and what's flooding.
Sure, absolutely.
So flash is just kind of like the name states.
Yeah,
it happens
just-
in a flash of a second.
Yeah, a lot of times before, within several minutes to under an hour, you can just have water accumulate in areas where it's not supposed to be.
Now, with those different kinds of storms, what are different ways that we can prepare for them?
Sure.
'Cause I'm sure they're all different.
Well, definitely looking out for the forecast. If you have activities planned, or if you are looking to travel or be on the roadways, just kind of knowing what you're getting into. A lot of people think that meteorology is kind of a guessing game, but there is a science behind it, and there is some predictability. And so to be able to know and be aware of what you're getting into can kind of help you plan your activities to be safe.
Now, when it comes to, you mentioned tornadoes, what's something that we should know when we see that one could be coming?
Sure. Well, a lot of people tend to think, oh, it's a beautiful thing, I want to stand outside and watch it, and you really shouldn't. You really should be inside in an internal area and not standing by the windows watching the storm pass by. They can do serious damage. I know we've all seen videos on the internet of roofs ripped off building and cars flipped over and things like that.
Think Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, sure, Wizard of Oz. We don't want a house to fall on anyone, but certainly you want to move to the inner portions of your house and move away, maybe to the basement if possible, if you have a basement, and always just kind of be aware of what, as circumstances are changing, listening to the weather on your phone, on your radio, whatever the case might be.
If you don't have a basement, what should you do?
As long as you can get to the innermost portion of your home or your apartment or your condo, a lot of times in your bathroom may be safe. You want to be away from an area that's wet. You don't want to be standing in water just to prevent the risk of electrocution. And also try not to use electrical devices. Try to maybe have your phone or a battery-powered radio, but try not to be plugging things in and trying to run too much electricity.
And that's the same for thunderstorms as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anytime you have that, those storms, those highly charged storms, there's a threat of electrocution.
There's a couple things that I don't know if they're myths or not, so
Sure.
I want to debunk them if they are.
Absolutely.
But one is if it's storming outside, you shouldn't be in the bathtub or using a landline phone.
Sure, and there is some truth to that. Not many of us have landline phones anymore, but for those who do, there have been reported cases. Now, it's a very small chance. It's not going to happen to everybody who's using a landline phone, but there have been reported cases of people being electrocuted. And certainly you don't want to be in water. A lot of people say, oh, I like to go take a shower when it's raining so I can just avoid the storm, but that's not a good idea because those electrical currents can travel through your pipes and can cause electrocution.
And now when it comes to tornadoes,
Yes.
and I've been through this situation before with my family. I remember as a kid, my mom running around trying to open up all the windows
Sure.
because of pressure. Is that true?
Not really. No, I mean, again, you're preventing the pressure or the wind from pressing on those windows, but you're creating the opportunity for debris to travel through. You're creating so many opportunities for moisture to get into your home and damage your home. You really just want to hunker down and let the storm pass.
Okay. Now, again, with storms, there's different forms of them, but
Sure.
there's also, when it comes to being made aware of them, a watch or a warning.
Right.
What is the difference?
Sure. A watch indicates that the conditions in the air are favorable for the storm to occur. It doesn't necessarily mean that a storm is going to happen, but the likelihood is high that it may happen. A warning, on the other hand, either means that a storm has been spotted and confirmed or is appearing on the radar. And so you don't want to take either one lightly, but you want to know that a warning is definitely more severe than a watch.
Now, with that, we had mentioned flooding and flash flooding. What are some things we should look out for, whether it is a watch or a warning?
Sure. Well, flooding generally tends to happen historically in the same kinds of places. So if you have an area in your home or in your neighborhood that is prone to flooding, you may find that it does occur regularly in the same spots. I know I've heard of places where people may have a marker on their mailbox that they mark that when it floods, it usually gets up to this level or things like that. So just kind of know the history of where you are, where you're traveling. And also, again, the forecast can change really rapidly and really quickly. And so always be alert for what information is coming out when these things are happening.
Now, what should you do if you are in the middle of a flood and you've never experienced one before?
Sure. Well, we always say, turn around, don't drown. Never try to drive your car through elevated water. If you are in an area where you can get to a high, dry place, you want to do that. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to, I'm just going to drive through the storm as quickly as possible. Get out of your car, get somewhere safe, and just kind of hunker down and wait 30 minutes or so for the storm to pass.
Yeah, because if you're out, there could also be down power lines
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. One of the things that we say as it relates to storms is, there's a little bit of a myth that people talk about, I can count the number of seconds between the thunder and the lightning, and that's not totally true.
Oh.
However, what you can say is, if you count the number of seconds between thunder and lightning, and it's less than 30 seconds, then it means you probably should go inside and take some cover. And we call it the 30-30 rule. So if it's those two things are within 30 seconds of each other, you should take cover, and you should stay inside until at least 30 minutes after the storm has passed.
Now, also part of storms, more often than not, is lightning.
Yes.
What are some things we should do to be prepared, whether we're indoor or outdoor?
Sure, absolutely. So lightning is a scary thing. People do get struck by lightning. They say lightning never strikes twice, but lightning does strike.
Yeah.
And so if you are outside and there is lightning, try not to get caught outside. Try, if at all possible, to get inside. You don't want to be the tallest object in an open field for lightning to strike you. And so in that regard also, if you do get stuck outside and you can't make it inside, stay away from isolated tall trees. Try to find an area where there is maybe a bunch of trees and you're huddling by the smaller ones and not by the bigger ones. And then also watch out for things like metal fences. You talked about wires being down. Anywhere that there's a metal conductor, also try not to stand where there's water accumulating because that can also conduct the electricity. If you do get inside, again, 30 minutes. Let the storm pass and don't rush to get outside. I know a lot of times, especially folks that work outside, contractors and electricians
Yes.
and plumbers like that, they may try to, I'm going to start this project and then as soon as the storm comes, then I'll pass. Don't get caught doing something that you may not be able to interrupt and come back out. Just go inside, let it pass, and come back out. It's not worth the risk to rush yourself through something like that.
Because that lightning can strike before the storm even starts coming down.
Absolutely.
Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
What about with driving? A lot of people think like you're safe in your car driving because lightning's going to hit that and you're good.
Again, it's a giant box of metal and aluminum. You don't want to be in that when the electricity strikes. It can conduct that electricity and can cause you harm try to find, if you're traveling on the highway, try to find a rest stop, or if you're in town, use it as an opportunity to go sit, have a cup of coffee, have a lemonade on a hot summer day, and just kind of let it pass and wait it out. There's nothing going on in our lives, as much as we may be in a rush. There's nothing that you just can't give it 30 minutes and be safe.
Yeah. Any other myths about thunderstorms we should
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. A lot of times people say, I hear a phrase, heat lightning. There's no such thing as heat lightning. What people think is heat lightning is actually just storms that are further off in the distance. They might be 50 to 100 miles away, and so you see the lightning, but you don't hear the thunder just because of how far away it might be. Another myth that we hear is, the sky is green. That means there's going to be a tornado. Most tornadoes happen between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., and that's just the time of day that the sky is green, just because of how the sun is setting. And so those two things aren't really related.
Oh, wow. Very interesting, because I thought both things this whole time.
Sure.
So.
And also, like we talked about before, about the counting the seconds, that's a myth. That's not something that is really accurate.
Well, you just debunked everything that I grew up believing, so that's good, though.
Sure.
When we return, we're going to have much more severe weather preparedness stuff to talk about, so stay tuned for more of Healthy Cleveland.
One in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Got a quarter?
Welcome back to Healthy Cleveland. I'm your host, Leah Haslage, and today we're talking severe weather preparedness. With us is Shaddy Swade, Project Director for the Cleveland Department of Public Health's Office of Emergency Preparedness, and Jordan Bryan from the Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center is our American Sign Language interpreter. Welcome back.
Thanks.
So now, of course, summer months gets into extreme heat.
Yes.
And so what are some things we can do to prepare when those dog days of summer come?
Absolutely, and it seems like you hear all these things about global warming and and it seems like we're having hotter and hotter summers as the years go by. Definitely, the first thing you can do is when you wake up in the morning and you get dressed, dress appropriately for the day. A lot of times you can have a swing. It might be 50 degrees in the morning and then it's 90 degrees by lunch. So choose loose clothing, lightweight clothing, light colored clothing, and dress in layers. If you know that your office might be cold or you're wherever, bring a sweater, but plan that you can add or shed layers as you need to throughout the day. A lot of times too, when we exercise, when we're outside, we want to be outside, we want to enjoy the fresh air. Don't overexert yourself. A lot of people like to run in the spring and it's really nice weather, and then the summer comes and they want to keep running, but you can't push yourself as hard as you do when it's hotter out and more dry. If you're going to be outside for extended periods of time, you always want to be wearing sunscreen. And you always want to wear a sunscreen with an SPF of at least 15 and put it on at least 30 minutes before you go outside. And if you're going to be outside for a long time, reapply it every 2 hours. Wear a hat or sunglasses if you need to. And then the most important thing that we like to say, big public health thing, is water first for thirst. Yes. When you're thirsty and you're outside, water is the number one thing you should drink above anything else.
Yeah, especially when the weather gets above 80 degrees, how often should we be hydrating ourselves? Is there a key amount of water we should be intaking?
And it's different for everyone based on your body weight and kind of how you drink things. One of the things that people hear a lot is, well, I drink a lot of Gatorade or I drink a lot of sports drinks, and sports drinks are for athletes. They're not just for everyone who is just outside during the heat. There's a lot of sugar in those drinks that can make you feel more thirsty. Anything with caffeine and alcohol, you shouldn't really be drinking if you're going to be outside extended period of time. Drinking water is kind of unique to ourselves. You kind of know what your body tells you. Another myth that people talk about is, well, I don't really need to be drinking too much water because I'm still using the bathroom regularly. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not dehydrated if you're still using the bathroom regularly. So you still need to be always kind of kind of go with your own gut feeling and know what your body feels like, and make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of water, and err on the side of drinking too much as opposed to too little.
And check up on the elderly.
Absolutely. Elderly, pets, kids, a lot of the folks that, with the elderly it's different, a lot of times that they may not realize, or they may not be aware, especially with pets and kids. They can't always tell us when they're thirsty, and they can't always tell us when they're starting to feel those symptoms of heat exhaustion or heat dehydration. And so it's very important for all those groups to make sure that you're being aware of them and monitoring them too.
And especially with pets and children, car safety.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we hear too often about stories of children and pets being left in cars. So what are some key things there?
I mean, like you said, we hear so many stories about, I just ran in to pick up the dry cleaning. I was only going to be 30 seconds. But you should never leave your pets or your kids in the car in the heat. Take them with you. And the other thing about pets and kids is, they may need extra time to just kind of rest when it's hot out. If you're running around doing errands, going to the grocery store, going here, going there, taking them with you, pace yourself and give them time, because they can't move as fast as adults do, and they can't tell you when they're quite as exhausted sometimes as adults can. And so just make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on them and overexerting them.
Are there any other myths we should know about when it comes to heat? Because I know there's like heat exhaustion and there's heat strokes.
Sure, absolutely.
What are those differences?
Yeah, there are different in terms of if you're feeling just a rash or if you're feeling warm. Definitely any time that you're feeling dizzy or nauseous or kind of loopy, you just kind of don't feel yourself. Whether it's heat exhaustion, whether it's heat stroke, you should treat it all the same, and really take precaution and make sure that you're drinking water and seek medical attention if you think, hey, something's not right with me. There are different levels of severity, like you mentioned, between heat strokes and heat exhaustion and all these types of things, but all of them are serious, and all of them are something that you shouldn't take lightly.
And you said hydration, of course, is the number one when it comes to that.
And water first for thirst.
Water first for thirst.
Yeah.
And then the myths. Any other myths with heat?
Yeah. Again, like I talked about, drinking sports drinks. Those are things that they taste great, but they have a lot of sugar with them. If you're outside, at a barbecue or something like that, and you're having a few alcoholic drinks, alcohol can also dry you out and kind of dehydrate you a little bit. So always make sure that you're mixing in a bottle of water here or there. And also, when it comes to sunscreen and being in the sun, you have to reapply. And even if you have a darker skin tone, you still need sunscreen. A lot of people say, well, I can't get a tan if I'm wearing sunscreen. You can. There's different levels of sunscreen. There's different SPFs. Some are that are heavier than others, and so just make sure that you're taking all these precautions. We only get one body. We have to protect it, and we have to treat it the best we can.
You may not get a tan, but you could get skin cancer.
Absolutely.
So the trade-off right there.
Yeah.
Now, what are some other ways we can prepare ourselves, whether it's severe weather with storms or with heat?
Absolutely.
What kind of go-to kits should we be having at home?
We always talk about ready in 3. And that's a 3-step process you can take to prepare yourself for anything you're going to encounter. And ready in 3 is very simple. Number 1 is having a kit. So you should have a preparedness kit in your home, in your car, in your work, at your school, places that you go regularly. And you should, throughout the year, kind of update what the materials are in that kit. In the winter, you may want blankets and sweaters and things like that. In the summer, you may want more water or sunscreen. Know that sometimes in the summer we lose power. We have thunderstorms and we have these tornadoes like we talked about that may knock out your electricity. And so have everything in that kit that you would need in your home if you were without power for a couple of days at a time. Medications, non-perishable food items, things like peanut butter and crackers and things like that can get you by for a few days. Yeah. So that's step 1, is having the kit. Number 2 is having a plan. If communications are out and you can't communicate with your family, you can't call or text or anything like that, have a plan with your family of, hey, if a tornado hits and we can't get in touch with each other, this is our rally point. We're meeting at grandma's house, or we're meeting at wherever. And make sure that you're exercising that plan, and that especially the young members of your family know what that plan is. And then the third part of Ready in 3 is just listening for more information. When we have severe weather, or when we have things going on, information changes constantly. Yeah. Updates come from emergency management, from the local media on a regular basis. Just make sure that you're listening to that information, you're digesting it. You know what the valid news sources are, and that you're not listening to the fake news, but you're following along with what truly is going on and being able to adapt to the situation as it changes.
Now, where can we find more information?
Sure. So a lot of this information that we discussed today will be linked to on our Cleveland Department of Public Health website. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. And I would also encourage folks to visit the CDC website, cdc.gov. Pretty much any other topics that we talked about you can search for, and there are fact sheets there that will help to explain in more detail a lot of this information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shaddy, for
Thank you
everything.
for having
We
me.
learned a lot today. And thank you, Jordan, from Cleveland Hearing and Speech. And don't forget to also check out tv20cleveland.com. We'll have information available for you there as well. That's all for Healthy Cleveland. I'm Leah Haslage. Until next time.